Hello, and welcome back to the Argyle CX UX Leadership Forum, Channel and Brand Marketing. My name is Eric Wallace with Argyle. A brief note before I turn things over to our panel moderator. We want to hear from you, so in order to ask questions during the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we'll address your questions at the end of the session. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Diana Cameron, who is Director of Product Management, Enterprise Solutions at Comcast. We're excited to have Diana and our panelists with us for a panel discussion called 360-Degree Customer View, Achievable or Out of Reach. Welcome, Diana. Over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. First off, let's go around the virtual table, introduce ourselves, and give a brief definition of 360-degree customer view. So, Patty, let's start with you.
Can everyone hear me? Good. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Patty Zach, and I'm the Chief Customer Officer at FiscalNote. FiscalNote, for those of you who don't know, it's an information services company that specializes in policy and market intelligence. Exciting times happening here. We just recently went public in August, and so part of my responsibility is to oversee our customer support and customer success teams globally. The question for you, from you, Diana, was what is 360 degree? What is a 360 degree view of a customer? Quite simply, I view it as a comprehensive view of our customers' data. Comprehensive really is one singular view at what our customers are doing, both outside of their relationship with us as FiscalNote and both within FiscalNote. So that's really the simplest way I can put it.
Great, thank you. Amanda, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda, and I'm a very proud owner of a 1-year-old Pomsky puppy, and his name is Hamilton. So if you hear him barking later, I apologize. That aside, I am a certified innovation and product management experience design lead at Capital Group, which is a global $2.5 trillion investment management company. And in that role, I lead all of the UX work for our B2B division, and that has roughly an $850 billion client base. And to keep it as brief as possible, I'll just say that I grew up in a blended family in Southern California, attended universities both in and out of the United States, which taught me a lot about how to have empathy, how to be accepting of different people's values, understanding different people's mindsets. Was then an AP English literature teacher right out of college, and definitely taught me a lot about how to delight students. Those are my customers, and also stakeholder management with parents and the administration. And I wanted to have a much higher impact than the size of just a classroom. And so I joined a Fortune 100 company called CBRE, which is commercial real estate. And I led their business development and marketing efforts there. And before I knew what the actual language and terminology was called, I did things like go with the sales brokers to directly observe customers, talk with them, prospective clients. And later on, I learned, oh, that was qualitative interviews, ethnographic research, design thinking. And that served me well when I then joined Capital Group. And so in Capital Group, I've had a range of roles, from being an associate product manager to a UX designer for our emerging tools and technologies, to now leading the UX and innovation for our B2B division. And a little bit different than Patty. So my definition of a 360-degree customer view is really twofold. The first is that it's the perspective of your company looking at both that qualitative, quantitative data of the customer to really understand their jobs to be done. But the second part of it is it's also the customer's perspective of your company and your brand. And so that two-way street, for at least for me and our company, is really important, because for every amazing experience a customer has with another product or another brand, it just then raises the bar for your own. And so that's a little bit about my definition of that 360-degree customer view.
Great, thank you. And Kushi, could you please introduce yourself and give your definition? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Oops, sorry about that. So I was complimenting Amanda on the awesome introduction. So my name is Kushi Sinha. I'm a US user experience designer and a strategist at Verizon. And I have over a decade of experience transforming experiences across the diverse channels like digital and assisted channels throughout customer journey. And lately, I have been heavily involved with the omni-channel efforts within Verizon. And specifically for past 2 years, I've been working in the B2B world, similar to Amanda. So my definition of customer 360 view is complementing what Amanda just said. It's understanding every aspect of your relationship or the company's relationship with your customer and having a comprehensive or the complete picture of who they are by unifying all the data from the different sources you have. But it doesn't end there. One thing is very important. This can be a very powerful tool for that we have in our arsenal, right? And that can help us build genuine connections and trust with the customer. So it should be used with all the, with the all fairness and keeping privacy and transparency and accountability in mind. So that's my definition of customer 360.
Fantastic. Okay, let's dig in a little bit more. What data goes into forming a 360-degree customer view? So data is obviously very important. What data goes into that? Amanda, do you want to start?
Sure. So for me, I see data in a few different ways that all contribute to, as you said, forming that 360-degree customer view. There's the qualitative bucket and then the quantitative bucket. And then within those, there's primary data and then secondary data. And so the qualitative, for me, the goal is really to understand the behaviors of a much smaller segment of your customers so that you ultimately have empathy for them and then produce artifacts of that empathy. So things like personas, journey maps, experience blueprints, and that is then, those artifacts are used for the product team and for stakeholders, because that way the customer is then represented in all parts of that decision-making process and in that product development process. The second piece is the quantitative side. So if qualitative is all about understanding the behaviors and the needs of a smaller part of your customer base, quantitative research is really about providing that statistical significance to see if that insight you learned that was true for a smaller group is those behaviors from a much broader population, and if it's true for a much wider sample size. The other pieces that I mentioned, primary and secondary data. So primary data, like this is your own data. You're the one who's doing all of the methods, things like generative or evaluative work where you're either putting prototypes in front of users, getting feedback through user testing or those interviews. It's also the most time consuming, but to me, it's also the most valuable because it's your own North Star research question, your own methodology, your own synthesis and analysis. An example I'll give with secondary data. So this is not your own data, but it's things like past research reports or user surveys, performance data, financial reports. And this can be broader reports that summarize industry trends or press releases. And they're helpful and contribute to what I think is that richer picture of that current reality. An example of when I've really used this, I think, to good effect at Capital is if you purchase different reports like Gartner's reports that are very credible or other credible institutions, it's often really reassuring to colleagues, especially if they're a little more skeptical about design thinking or taking a customer-driven approach to be able to make really great products. So those are just some examples of data and how we've used them to create that 360-degree customer view.
Fantastic. Patty or Kushi, do either of you have anything more that you want to contribute there?
Yeah, I love this panel because we have very different perspectives, but we all kind of get to the same end state. So I love this question when it comes to how you get the data and where you get it from. My perspective of this is very similar to Amanda's, but I really bucket into 3 different areas first. The first party data, second party data, and third party data. Very common for our business intelligence team, but also still gets to the same results as what Amanda was talking to. So our first party data is really anything that we collect ourselves. Most of our firepower is spent on this, all the data that we can get from our customers, either from their usage of our products, the typical know your customer questions that our customer facing teams ask of them, and then we keep in our CRM. So all of our mental firepower is predominantly spent here. Second party data is really any of that data that a organization collects on their own customers and provides to us. So an example of this is like LinkedIn Sales Navigator. That is not data that we collect on ourselves, but LinkedIn collects it from their customers, and then they provide it as a service to other companies. So that, in a nutshell, is really second party data, still important, but really not where we're spending the time. I see that as a complement to the first party data. The third bucket is the third party data, and that's really who are those data aggregators who are collecting data from different sources, bringing in insights, and then selling it or providing it to other organizations for their use. I think of things like a case study from Gartner that Amanda mentioned, like ZoomInfo, any of those companies that really specialize in bringing together pieces of information and providing insights to help other organizations. But in those three, the one that we really focus on is our first party data collected from our customers. From there, really kind of disseminates amongst different functional groups for different purposes. Marketing uses that in a different way from sales, in a different way from customer success, in a different way from product. And so as we take those three different parties of data, bring them in-house and figure out how to use it, that becomes kind of the insights that help drive the different functions of the organization.
Fantastic. So let's go to the customer perspective of this. What do efforts to create a 360-degree customer view look like to the customer? Does it change their experience? And if so, how? Kushi, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. So what I think is that customers' overall experience with companies is impacted not because we are collecting the data on them, but it's because how the companies are using that data to, utilizing that data to impact the experience of that customer. So that's where the analytics maturity of the company comes into play. So for example, if a company is in an earlier stage of maturity, in that scenario, the company must be learning about the customers, but not necessarily using analytics to improve the customer's experience in real time, right? So in that scenario, what will be the experience for the customer? It will be fragmented and disjointed across the different channels, and it might result in frustrating the customers. They might be receiving generic offers which might not be related to them, or even worse, they might be receiving those offers on the channels which they are not even engaged with, right? So that can be the experience. On the other side, if a company is high on a analytics maturity scale, right, then their experience is going to be very highly personalized, and they will get a personalized recommendations. They might have some loyalty programs like where they will be earning points based on their past purchase, previous purchase, and all these users responses will be further help company to enrich the customer's profile and ultimately refining the experience. So that's my take on, how the experience is going to be different for the user.
Fantastic. Amanda or Patty, do either of you have any additional thoughts here?
Amanda, you can go and I'll go next.
Okay, thanks, Patty.
Yeah.
So in terms of the efforts around creating that 360-degree, what do they look like to the customer? I would say the unpopular answer of it depends, because if you do this poorly, especially if it's more like UX research, the customer experience, I think, could decline because it feels like just engaging with you is work, or it's something that makes them feel nervous. I think if you do it well, the efforts to create that view feel fun, and they know that you're going to act on the feedback they give you. One book that describes how to do this and how to do it well is called Innovation Games, and it's used by both UX and product management practitioners, and is all about how to make those breakthrough products through more like collaborative play experiences. Side note, if there's anything that you or your team are trying to learn and you're not sure how to do that upscaling, one method that I found really effective at work is send a meeting invite for everyone to show up with whatever the resource is. Make sure that you as a manager, you are attending to set that tone. Split the time up where half the reading or watching that learning is done and the other half is collaboration of how you're going to apply that learning. So just a brief aside for anything that you hear today of how to be able to do that in real time at your company. Back on track with the question, I think broadly speaking on your side of the business, the things that you're doing to make an effective effort to learn more about your customers have 4 key ingredients. So the first is that it's systematic, meaning it's planned, it's well organized, you have a goal in mind, you have a method. The second ingredient is the objectives. So there's minimal researcher or a method bias. Third ingredient, it's focused. So you have a very specific and open-ended question in mind you're wanting to get validation from customers from. And then the fourth ingredient is actionable. So the results, whatever they are, enable you to take action to make a better customer experience for them. And so from the customer's point of view, that was from the business's point of view of the operations side. From the customer's point of view, you're doing those either strategic or small things to make a difference for them. So one of the things that I've done, for example, is you call each of those interviews not an interview. I would title those interviews as something like, how can I help you today? Or your expertise is greatly valued. And so your job is to always make sure they feel like they're the teacher, they're the expert, and that you're there to be curious and you're the student. And so I think in the moment when you're capturing that data, if they say something unexpected, that's when you savor the surprise, no matter what it is, because that's still quality data that you're learning from them, even if things don't go exactly as you were assuming they were going to go. And so I think through doing those types of things, you're able to really have really great efforts, at least from that qualitative standpoint of trying to get that 360-degree customer view. And Patty, I know you're going to say a lot of other amazing things, and so I want to be able to give you a chance to add to that question.
Thanks, Amanda. I'd simplify it from the customer's view. If an organization is putting forth efforts to create a 360-degree customer view, from the customer, it looks like relevancy. We're really, and Fiscal Note, we sell predominantly B2B solutions to our customers. And so if you think about where we're at today as consumers, we have technology everywhere. I really call it technology pollution. Our lives and our cell phones, we've got 100 apps, we're getting pinged every which way. That has really spilled over in the B2B space. And people who work in their normal day-to-day lives are using Salesforce. They're using any type of Microsoft Suite, Office, Google. Enter any type of SaaS product. You've got people who are working with a bunch of different technology platforms. And what happens? They're all trying to contact you, right? With things that are either relevant or irrelevant. And so people who are in the B2B SaaS space really need to identify what is relevant for our customers, because they are being just bombarded with information coming from their personal life in technology and in their business life. And so what we've done really is customer segmentation is solely based on all the customer data that we get, both first, second, and third party. And so if we're doing that right, the information that goes to our customers and how we engage with them is really, really relevant. And so an example of that is one of our products, and we have over 20 different products. One of our products is really a news source. And if you think about that, you really don't want customers to be getting news that's not relevant to them. And so we really spend a lot of time focusing on what's relevant to our customers so they can spend time actually getting value from what they've purchased versus getting all the engagements that have been coming their way and spending time putting away what's not relevant. So really all of that just boils down to, if a organization is really putting forth the right efforts to create a 360-degree customer view, it looks like relevancy. And to me, we're saving our customers valuable time and resources so that they can get their jobs done. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
That's an excellent transition to this question around, how can the efforts at forming a 360-degree view of the customer's help then. So what's in it for them? How is it beneficial? I think the relevancy is perfect, but how is it beneficial to the customer? Amanda, do you want to go?
Yeah, happy to. I think simply what's in it for them, a quality product. So something that they find valuable that solves their biggest pain points and challenges. And on the flip side, it's also hearing their pain points and solving their root issue rather than just symptoms that they're telling you or showing you or that's revealed in the data. And I think one of the biggest things that I'll do to be able to create two different types of artifacts as a result of those different efforts. It's going to be one report that the customer sees and a second report that a stakeholder sees as a result of the effort. So the one that stakeholders see, they have all of the actionable things that we're doing to create a product based upon what we've learned from the customers. Very importantly, you're not sharing this with customers only because if something changes and if you're running agile and not waterfall, typically something's going to change. It's going to be more complex than you think. Then you get in a really tricky spot of having to go back possibly on what you said you were going to deliver as a solution to them. And so what the customer gets back from those efforts is a summary of key learnings. So for example, if I've developed really great rapport with different B2B clients I've interviewed, I'll be the one to send the report out to them because I was the one who spoke to them. If the relationship manager or the client service team wants to be the one to do it because they own and manage that relationship, I'm agnostic to that, and it's absolutely feel free to send them the report. And so the important takeaway to me with this is that you have, again, two separate reports. One that the customer gets that is about the problem space, the key learnings, validated problem statements, where they're able to read it and feel seen, feel heard, that you got it right with those efforts. And then the ones that, again, stakeholders receive about the solution space. So the key learnings plus those proposed solutions and recommendations that they can easily act on, react to, green light, or have questions about.
Great. Kushi, do you have any thoughts? I think you're on mute.
I'm sorry, I've got this bad habit from the meetings, Now that I'm in panel, I have to stop doing that. So Diana, would you mind repeating the question, because I want to make sure that I'm getting I'm answering the right question.
Of course, yeah, no, just looking to understand what's in it for the customer. How does it benefit the customer? The efforts at forming a 360-degree view. How does it help them?
Yeah, sure. So if the companies are able to, form a 360 view, this will definitely improve their experience. And I'm a UX designer, so I will always talk in terms of experience, right? They are going to get the hyper personalized white glove experience, and which will save their time and cognitive load. So they will be getting more personalized, recommendations. They will feel cared for because this shows how companies committed to exceed their expectations. They will feel empowered because they are getting services that fit their need, and those services are easy to use, and then those services make meaningful difference in their lives. They may also see value because now we are providing them the product at the right price, which are right for them, right? So those are the benefits that the customer will get, along with like what Amanda already mentioned.
Perfect. Patty, do you have any additional thoughts on this?
Sure. I'd simplify it as customer results. One of the defining areas of a customer's journey when they're coming to renewal, and again, we're in the B2B SaaS business, is come renewal time, what is the number one predictor of customers who renew? And it's demonstrable results. And so if a company is really doing a good job in getting a 360-degree view of their customer, similar to what Amanda said, they're able to demonstrate the successes and the results that customer has been able to achieve using your product. So an example of that is one of our products is called Voter Voice. It's an advocacy tool that allows our customers to release campaigns. And so one of the things that our customer data provides is, how do you benchmark against your peers when you are sending out campaigns, if you're an advocacy customer? And these are the kinds of views where, if you really don't provide customers with that kind of transparency, how will they know if they're being successful with your product? And in this market today, especially now we're in the end of the year, business decision makers are really taking a critical view at expenses and whether or not the solutions that they are paying for are providing any type of ROI or results. And so it's incumbent upon us as trusted partners or vendors to be able to deliver on what are the results that customer is having as a result of using your platform or your solution or service. And so by definition, we have to be able to provide our customers with our view of their 360-degree journey with us, so that they can make informed decisions of, am I going to renew this solution? Have I gotten enough ROI out of what we've purchased? And then that becomes something that empowers them to make a decision between you or your competitor. So it really comes down to, is this something that a customer will be able to see results from? And if we have that 360-degree view on them, let's show it to them and let them know that you have actually been very successful, and here's why. So yeah.
Perfect. So looking at the data itself, right? So how can you integrate customer data that you're collecting from multiple sources? So how does that integration happen? Amanda, do you have any thoughts there?
I think it can happen a few different ways. So if you don't have any customer insights tool that helps you aggregate the data for you, I think the first step you'll need to do is to identify if you're working with either unstructured or structured data. If it's unstructured, things like qualitative sentiment, all those interviews you've done with customers, that's step one, is you need to begin structuring it so that you're going to have clean data and whatever that final aggregation place is for your company, to be able to actually start manipulating or using and leveraging that data, so it goes from data to insights. One way I've done this, and cheap, free even, especially if you use anything like Google Sheets or if you use anything like Microsoft Excel, is creating a note index. And that's something where, when you are looking and picturing Excel right now, each column on the top is a data category type. So things like the customer name, the actual note, like what that content of the note is, the qualitative sentiment is, if it's a functional job to be done, social job to be done, pain point, aspiration, all of those data category types are those columns. Every row under that note column is one idea or one piece of sentiment the customer said. Now, this is a very laborious and long process, because what you actually do is you start tagging all of that unstructured, that's now becoming structured customer data. And the reason why it's long in a process and why I'm still recommending it is because you're then able to then lean into the quantitative side by saying to a stakeholder or a product manager, hey, we need to design this type of feature over everything else because 87% of all customer feedback had this same pain point. So through that transformation process, you're able to very easily make more strategic decisions because you have now created that type of enabling structure. If I put on my product hat to answer that question, I think a second way is always making sure that you're using that 360-degree customer view when you write great agile user stories. And so to me, this is where in that acceptance criteria, you have a small piece of that customer qualitative data, making sure that it's being delivered upon. You're integrating analytics into the acceptance criteria. So all of those little horizontal sleeves, you're incorporating that customer view where rubber hits the road when you're making products. And to me, that distillation of it is really in user stories. And so those are two different examples, one with that UX researcher hat on, the other of a product manager hat.
Perfect. That's super helpful. Patty, do you have any advice there on how you can integrate customer data that you're collecting from multiple sources?
Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough. I'll say I can speak about what we've done through the lens of customer success. And what we've done is really a few things. One, we've partnered with our business and business intelligence team to perform analytics on what are the key behaviors that customers or users are doing within our products that align to retention. And so we've really used a scoring model. We said, okay, here is product A. Of those customers that have renewed, what are the top 3 or 4 things that they took advantage of in product A that really say, all right, our customers are really achieving the results that we want them to. And so that kind of analytics happens with a team that primarily specializes in data and insights. From there, we've built scores in our customer success tool. So I'll give you an example. For one of our products, we found, and I'll use our campaign product, our advocacy tool. And not surprisingly, we've noticed that customers who at least send out a campaign in 1 year and upload contacts, they have a higher likelihood of renewal. The reason behind that is because this is an advocacy tool and that's why they bought it. So the logic really makes sense. So what we do is create a scoring model on that and say, all right, if customers are no longer doing these things after a certain period of time, using all the data that's feeding into it from our product, from our CRM, then we have the ability to provide them with relevant information that can help guide them to being able to do those things that get them to the results that align with the reason why they bought. So that's really how we looked at that from a customer success lens. The other is an account management lens. And one of the things that happened when I first came to Fiscal Note is I started asking our internal stakeholders, I said, what is it that you do to understand if a customer is successful using the product? There were things like they attended a meeting with us, they're using this and that feature, they've attended a marketing event, they've been a part of a user testing group. There's all these, they're paying their bills on time. There were all these things that really came from data sources from all over the company, right? Finance, if they paid their bill, has a separate data point from our product team who's saying that they're using these certain features than our sales team who said, oh yeah, they attended a meeting. And so what we did was something very similar. We took a scoring model. We took all those things that we believed that if you look at the 360-degree view of the customer, if they're doing these things, we have a higher likelihood of having a customer who has demonstrable results. And so created a score, very simple with red, yellow, green, and said, if a customer is missing their mid-year review, if they're not paying their bills on time, if they're not attending or engaging with marketing, and all, going down the list, we have a score, red, yellow, green, and then we can take the rest of the customer data that we have and say, all right, let's show them this relevant information to help them get back on track. And so all of those things really live in our customer success software that we've really heavily invested in. And so that really allows us to scale up. All this work that a lot of our frontline people were doing are now kind of aggregated into a few scores that provide signals as to what customers are doing, if they're on track, if they're not, and then we can intervene when needed. So it really relies on a few things like your analytics team or your BI team, software that you're using, and then a really good understanding of what aligns with customer results.
Fantastic. Okay, Kushi, this next question is for you. Once you've achieved a 360-degree customer view, what do you have to do in order to maintain it?
So I would say this is a never-ending process, because things will change. It will change. The 360 view might change with one life event, or a store. Just new store was open and a customer went to the store, and then this was his first time to go to the store, but now the picture, their 360 view has changed. So it keeps evolving. So our main goal is to continue improving our customer view over time, and not wait to take actions on insights you already have. Use them for that means you are continuously unifying the customer's data, enrich the customer profile, and keep innovating and improving the customer's experience. So that's the best we can do.
Great. Fantastic. Patty, any final thoughts on this one on how to maintain?
Yeah, I love Kushi's answer. It is definitely it's an evolving process. I will say one of the things that we have to be really cognizant of as leaders is we have to align all of these efforts to revenue. It's really difficult to get buy-in and stakeholder engagement if you don't align all of these 360-degree efforts to revenue and the bottom line. And so I'd say all of the iterative processes that we have to engage in, we really have to, as leaders, say, all right, we're going to invest in more efforts to collect this data on our customer. Okay, well, how does that improve revenue?
I would double down, and I would say what Patty and what Kushi just said about it being an evolution and a journey that's always a living, breathing process and not something that's static. I think there's two main things to do once you've achieved that view. The first is, again, continue looking outside your company at trends, actions other companies are doing that could be meaningful to your customers. And that's important because customer behavior can and will change. And so you want to make sure that you continue evolving your customer view and don't fall into the trap to think that it's static. And what was true yesterday is also true today. A really concrete example of this is if you create something like personas, they're not evergreen. They're a static view of what was true in a particular moment in time. And so it's really important that for every new customer you acquire or for every customer pain point you solve, that you go back to see, is this still our customer view or has it changed? And I think the second thing is that you want to continue working with and collaborating with your own internal employees at your company who were your partners in helping you generate that view in the first place, because whatever new information they learn, they then know to keep you in the loop. And I think this is very true if you're at a large company, maybe more so than a smaller company. This is really true for the sales and relationship management or customer service teams, where if we implement a new feature or if a client invests more money because a feature delighted them so much, the product and design teams need to know that, because then you can make strategic choices to, number one, develop new features. Number two, expand that type of feature to other geographies, markets, or customer segments. Or number three, really hone in on that feature and continue making incremental improvements to it, since we already have that customer validation that it's valuable, and to Patty's point, that it generates revenue, that ROI. So those are just some examples of what to do when you maintain that customer view.
It speaks to my heart as a product person. The agility, needs to apply even to the 360 exercises, right? So, okay, so we have a couple of questions that have come in. I'm just going to open it up. We don't have a whole lot of time, but I definitely want to get to both. Someone says, we are struggling to get the concept of 360-degree customer view across to our leadership. Do you have any advice? So I'm just going to open that up to anybody who has a nugget of advice, and we'll keep it brief. Patty, Amanda, anyone?
Go ahead, I'll go next.
Awesome. Yes, so a lot of different things come to mind. One of the main things I think is, in general, broad advice, shrink something down to the size of comfort and make sure that once you've done that, it's viewed as important and relevant to leadership. For example, what's relevant to an engineering leader, very different persona than a marketing or a sales leader. So I think knowing more about what leadership in general at your company finds relevant is really key to them being able to align how that 360-degree customer view is valuable to them. For example, if we're thinking of what this looks like in motion, instead of trying to show everything of what that 360-degree customer view is for, let's say, a sales leader, break it down to a single customer journey that leader cares about. So for example, how a customer converts, and show that conversion journey, and then show them how that 360-degree view is very valuable and relevant specific to that one case study and scenario. So again, instead of trying to flood them with everything, shrink it down to the size of comfort and relevant, and make sure that it's not just what you think is important. You're not solving your own problem, you're solving another person. So make sure you know who you're talking to and that you're finding relevant things for whomever that leader is. And Patty.
Do we have time, Diana?
I think so. Yeah. I think we can get to the second question right after.
Okay, I'll summarize it in 2 words: relevancy and revenue. Anyone that I'm speaking to cross-functionally, if you want to get buy-in for a 360-degree view of your customer, you have to make it relevant and you have to align it to revenue. Different cross-functional teams have different KPIs, OKRs, whatever you want to call them. But almost always you can tie the customer to those 2 things, given their functional expertise. So in a nutshell, relevancy and revenue.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, final question here. What's the biggest mistake you've seen companies make in trying to form a clearer view of their customers, and how did they get past it? Again, I'm going to just open it up to all 3 of you. If anybody has any examples or experience of mistakes that you've seen and how they got past it.
I can speak to it generally with some, I've seen some examples where, and which I already mentioned earlier, that there are these companies on the spectrum of analytics maturity, and some companies which are not there on the general, analytics maturity are on the low side of that. We have seen that they are hesitant in utilizing the data they already have for their company and experimenting with it with the customers, right? And it becomes, with this agile model, agile world, it becomes very important to have those, experiments to be done and the innovations to be done in the shorter, phases, and then test it and see how it's working, and then feed back into the data, and, keep refining the data based on your experimentation. So my recommendation is don't hesitate in experimenting.
Perfect.
And oh, Diana, is there time for another response?
Please.
Okay.
Please, yes.
Awesome. The biggest mistake, not talking to your customers, and instead leaders using their own assumptions or internal subject matter experts thinking that they already know what the customer needs. And that's certainly happened in a lot of places that I've worked, and I've gotten past that by doing 3 main things. The first is I partner with the sales force and I teach them the benefits of doing those customer immersion activities. So thinking again back to what Patty was saying of linking to ROI. And these are things like being able to know the customers more deeply to sell cross-selling opportunities, or we can enable quick win fixes we can do that don't cost money, but it will deepen the relationship. So again, my persona was the sales associate. So I'm linking it to things they care about. So that was step number 1. Step number 2 is once I got sales on board, I was looking to see, okay, are there going to be any prickly stakeholders who I need to make sure that they understand the value of what we're doing? And this was important, especially for a B2B context where billions of dollars are on the line with any particular single customer touch point and engagement. And so I'll have one-on-ones with them, learn what their own goals are, and I'll dovetail how those customer activities are going to be aligned to their own objectives that they're trying to accomplish. And the third thing is then once I've done those customer immersion activities, I always make sure I then put on my own like Amanda PR hat on. And I always have a readout deck showing the value, the benefits of the work. I will make sure everyone knows what was done and the value of it, so that what was that mistake or the first thing that didn't happen or the company wasn't doing, it doesn't happen again, that we continue talking to customers and getting all of that 360-degree data.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Patty and Kushi. Thank all 3 of you so much. Fantastic panel. I'm going to toss it back over to Eric to close us off.
Great. Thank you all for this insightful discussion. I also want to thank everyone in the audience for joining us today for this excellent session. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. This concludes the Argyle CX UX Leadership Forum, Channel and Brand Marketing. Thank you again for joining us today and engaging with our content. Have a great rest of your day.